Hi, this is my audience. This is Nancy, Justin. Hi, Tyler. Hello, Siriana and Warren.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you, guys. And today, today I want to explain the significance of Juneteenth. My name is Patricia, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the background, the early years, and the impact that it'll have on our future generation. So this is a timeline to freedom, basically. This is the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863 by Abraham Lincoln. And from 1863 to 1865, they were still enslaved. And it was said between that time that the messengers just hadn't gotten there yet. But then we jump forward to 1980, where Juneteenth is actually recognized as a state holiday in Texas. So the slaves should have actually been freed 2 years earlier. In 1863, when he signed the Emancipation Proclamation, down south, they actually withheld that information. It was said that the messenger got murdered on his way there, or that they specifically withheld the information from slave owners so they could reap the benefits of the cotton that had already been grown for that time. And then we jump forward to where January 1st in 1980, Texas was actually the first state to recognize it as a state holiday. And it was all to the help of Al Edwards, who was the first black legislator in Texas. And so now that you know about the origin, we're going to talk about the beginning of Juneteenth. So basically, with nowhere to go, slaves still didn't care. They just wanted to migrate to up north as soon as possible to get rid of that old life. And so at June 15th, they recognized it as a holiday, and that was just reassuring that they would have time for each other. They would find all their family members who weren't with them at the time, and so that's why migrating up to the north was such an important part. In the beginning, they used June 19th as a celebration of freedom, celebration of self-education, and self-improvement. It just wasn't a party. It was more of getting in touch with your inner self and enjoying your new life. They did also have a very hard time celebrating, and it was because obviously it was still a lot of racism. So they put out new laws every other day that would ban the social gatherings and in public places. And former slaves who still had to work weren't actually granted the time off. If Juneteenth didn't fall on a weekend, then they would just have to miss the celebration altogether. And so through that, if they didn't have the time, or if they couldn't, they just wouldn't. But for that one problem, there was actually few black people, preachers, and landowners who would actually dedicate some land to them so they could celebrate. And it was actually because of Jackie Yates, who held a fundraiser where they raised over $1,000 to buy a piece of property in Houston, Texas, that was actually named the Emancipation Park. So that's where they all got together and celebrated because of other great black people. And we fast forward to today, and why it's so important for the future generation to understand the importance and the significance of Juneteenth. So today, actually, Juneteenth is experiencing a phenomenal growth as far as it's well known, and not just the black community, but many others, the Hispanic, the white, the Asian communities. And they actually like to block off streets in predominantly black neighborhoods and actually have a social gathering for kids, for the adults, for them to get together, for them to enjoy themselves and have time. And in Washington, D.C., specifically, there is a Smithsonian Museum that likes to fund and help other people celebrate Juneteenth. So with that, today, there is a lot of Afrocentric admiration for how we dress, how we wear our hair, how we act, how we talk, how we look in general. And it was because the slaves back then weren't allowed to look nice. They only had the rags that they had. So during that time when the freedom of slavery was happening, the former slaves would toss all their ragged clothes and wear beautiful dresses and from the former slave owners or wherever they could get their hands on it, and they would dress up for this holiday because it was just so unlike them to dress up. And so even now today, with the sweaters and the hats and the shirts that we wear to celebrate and to acknowledge what happened with Juneteenth. And as far as the food goes, everyone knows back then that slaves weren't getting a lot of the good food. They would either get scraps or just enough to keep them alive. So strawberry soda was actually their favorite. It was invented back then, which I didn't know. But strawberry soda was actually a very popular item, and as well as barbecuing. And I think that's where we got that from as well, since slaves had to deal with the unwanted pieces of the meat. They would season them with all the seasonings that they could find and throw it on a fire and do it that way. So the significance of a barbecue really goes back to that. And so all these reasons are, I feel, why Juneteenth is just such an amazing holiday that should be recognized on a national level. But for now, we can take what we can get. And I just believe that we should teach and show our future generation the importance of it. And in conclusion, I just feel like this holiday needs to be taught not only in schools, but in colleges, at home, wherever you can get the information, just to spread the word of how amazing African American people were in that time. So thank you guys, and good night.